back and no guest today.
That's okay. We are enough.
I know.
Yes. So today we want to talk about our eras, right? What did we learn?
We want to call it lessons learned in every decade. So we want to focus on the 20s, 30s, and 40s because some of us are about to hit 50 and some of us are already there. And it's a big year, major year.
I
1975.
don't feel any different than 30, to be honest. Ish.
Yeah.
30-ish.
I don't feel 50. Like when I think of 50 and I look at my parents, like I definitely don't feel the way.
Like the Golden Girls?
Yeah, I was going to say
Yeah.
the Golden Girls,
Like-
weren't they in their 50s or maybe
And late 40s. Rue
no?
McClanahan was like 48 or something.
Oh my God.
Which was what's Blanche.
Yeah.
Blanche, yeah.
Now, if you know who the Golden Girls are, then you're definitely born over
Well.
a certain age, a certain year.
Yeah, I don't feel that, and I don't feel like I look that, and I don't,
No, I mean, they had the white grays. I mean, we have grays, but they had like full-fledged, but old lady cut.
Yeah.
I can't believe they were in their 50s or 40s.
Yeah.
Imagine reenacting it.
They were playing retired women, weren't they?
I know.
So they were supposed to look older.
But one of them
character-wise.
still worked. A couple of them still worked. So it was weird.
Yeah.
Now that we're older, we're like, that didn't make sense. But okay.
Mhm.
It doesn't make sense because I always assumed they were retired and living together.
Yeah, in Florida.
'cause golden years.
Yeah.
That's what it
Ew.
should be like.
So they were supposed to look older, but even then I don't feel that way.
At all. No, I don't feel that way at all.
To me, the 20s was super transformative. Actually reminds me of the 40s. And this is why. To me, it's like the most transformative decade. So many different things happen in your early 20s as in your compared to your late 20s. Like you're a completely different person. I mean, I think you're always a different person, but I don't feel that as much with the 30s. So what I mean by that is at 20, you're like still in college. You're figuring out, you're about to graduate, hopefully. You don't know, at least that's my experience, our experience.
Mhm.
And, you're really like looking into your new job. You got side jobs. You're becoming an adult and you have all these decisions to make around career. And then you're dating or not dating or in long-term relationships that you have to think about. Do I want to marry this guy? Do I not? All of these things that a lot of our friends have experienced. For me personally, one thing I learned was because I got married at 29. And one thing I learned was that I really listened to my intuition, regardless of what everybody around me was doing. And I think I was really proud of that, like that I really had that intuition to say, this is not for me. So what I mean by that is like in my early 20s, I really didn't want a relationship. And at the time, women, we were supposed to be with boyfriends and not jump around and not just party. And so I feel like there was a freedom that I needed, that I wanted. And it came with travel and dating and clubbing and whatever exciting things we were able to do while being responsible, going to school, and the other thing, permission to change my mind. Like I had so many times I almost went to law school. I hated social work at first. I went back to it, which is why I knew it was for me.
Nursing.
I didn't go back. Yeah, I didn't go back to school till I was 29 as far as for the graduate school. I met Jose. Jose is my husband. I met my husband at 25, which felt like, okay, I met him and I knew the difference between meeting him and meeting other guys. So that's what the dating piece gave me, that ability to kind of know, okay, this guy's missing that. This guy's not the one, this guy, but it didn't need to be serious. So I knew that looking towards that it was for me for later, whereas sometimes people settle down earlier. So regardless of, I remember my aunt one time saying, well, you don't have a boyfriend? I'm like, no, not really. You don't want to get married and have kids? I'm like, yeah, someday. And I was very nonchalant about it. And she was like, she's not taking it seriously. She's not going to want. And so I remember feeling like I didn't take it personal. It was more like, well, that's your opinion. Like I didn't really allow it to influence me to the point where I just settled with any guy that I talked to or dated or wanted more, and I think that I learned that, and permission to change your mind, because every decision you make, especially your partner, is so impactful and it's going to affect you for the rest of your life. So I feel like I saw on a show saying, if you want to get married, not everybody does, and you pick your partner, let's say in your 20s especially, which is a hard decade to make that decision. Like I said, in the early part is different from the later part. And you make that decision, it's going to impact you for the rest of your life. So there's a lot of pressure in that decade because you're choosing partners, you're choosing careers, but I also want to say, like, permission to change your mind, permission to say you're not stuck. And sometimes it feels like you are. So I feel like I learned how transformative it was as a decade, how different it was in the beginning and the end, and how proud I am of myself that I listened to my gut when I wanted to, change course.
Would you go back and get married at 29 again?
Oh, that's a perfect age to get married.
You think
To
so?
me, for me, I'm gonna speak
Yeah,
to
yeah.
myself. Yeah, late 20s, early 30s. I don't
I think the
feel anything
30s.
before 27, 28
Yeah.
for me. And I just feel like, I probably could have sowed more oats, but I think I sowed some oats. So,
I wasn't an oat sower. I dated a lot. I had long-term relationships. That's because I was a little pendeja. Oh, I mean, but I never really did, like dated. I didn't know how to. Like I was in it for the long haul all the time. Waste of time, I think. It was a waste of time. But I feel like these girls that are getting married at were engaged at 23 and 24.
Oh my God. Yeah. I find that early myself.
I have this conversation all the time with my athletes because they're in college. And I always say, your teens are for your education. If you want to go to college or you want to develop a skill or whatever it is that you decide, do that in your 20s, because you're starting to build your foundation. And I said, this is your era to be free. So travel, date different people, date outside your race, gain experience, relation experience, relatable experience, learn who you are in relationships. Don't date anybody more than two years. Once you go into 3, then it's are we getting married? There's stages. So date someone, have fun. But if you see a red flag, keep it moving. Don't settle. Don't do any of that. In your 20s is you're developing your sense of self as an adult. Don't worry about what your parents say. Don't worry about what society says. Figure out who you are. Take that time. And that's something I wish I would have done more of. I think I was more so this checklist of filling expectations. Okay, I went to school, I got my master's, I got my apartment. I had this checklist of goals and I just did the next step. And every decision feels like a major decision in your 20s because you feel like whatever decision I make, this is for the rest of my life. And I'm like, no, you can change your mind. It's about
you don't
exploring
think that. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't think that.
Yeah.
And everybody's telling you go to college and get a degree and get a career and all that, but you're putting down the foundation for that. So you have to allow yourself your 20s to really focus on be selfish in your 20s. And I don't think I was selfish enough.
Back on that word selfish, I wanted to push back on our prior guests because my clients say this all the time. We're conditioned to say this all the time. And looking out for yourself isn't being selfish, in my opinion. You're doing something for you. And it's self-care. Now, if you're hurting people, yes, that's a different story. But usually when people refer to that word, it's really, I'm going to look out for me. And 20s is a perfect decade to do that. What do I want? Because it is going to impact my life. Yes, you can change your mind. Yes, we can change course. Yes, we can go to therapy and undo a lot of things and decide that in our 40s, we don't want to do what we did in our 20s. That's all true. But it is a thoughtful decade and it is a time to really look within and don't wait to your 30s and 40s to have to do that. You can look within and say, I'm going to do me. I'm going to do what I want to do, whether that's be free, whether that's get married young. If some people are not meant to want to be free, let's say, or they want that, that's fine. We want to be respectful of that. But like Sam said, I think that it is a great decade to be free and to really just in every sense. There's not just dating, not just travel, not just career. Is really the decade to do that for you.
And you're learning how to be an adult. And one of those things is, well, what is it that I want? What is best for me? And I think for me, I had older people that I looked up to, but I think I didn't realize till later in life that a lot of those relationships or people that I looked up to or people that I listened to for advice, I should have looked a little deeper and seen as those aren't people I should have followed. And
so they learn.
Right. They give you advice or they give you life advice. And I don't think I really looked at them and said, do I really want to be you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I was more so focused and determined. I was, driven. But again, I was also, I think in my 20s, conditioned to be in my survival mode. I think just my family dynamic, I held everyone down. emotionally. I was the translator. I was the one that everybody was attached to. So I was always people pleasing. I was always fulfilling whatever expectation of me there was. I was always looking for some level of validation for myself. And I think that I look back and I'm like, I should have dated more. I should have explored more. And I think my mom instilled a lot of fear in me. And so I didn't take the risks I should have taken in my 20s.
Well, I agree with you on that checklist because it's the same thing, like the college and, my mom pushing me towards nursing. And it's not my passion,
Yeah.
getting
You
that.
said it early on. I remember you
solid.
telling me that.
Yeah. But it's not my passion, probably from the get go.
No, that when you graduated, you're like, I don't want to do this.
Uh huh. And I messed up. Yeah. 1999, graduating as a nurse, and I didn't want to do it. And I'm dumb me, just kept trudging along in life, in relationships that went nowhere, and now, but now I can't change that.
Yeah. And what about the 30s? Because I feel like I was a different person every decade, and my focus was
Same.
completely different every decade.
I feel like I started my 30s feeling really good because it was like coming out of the end of the 20s as far as getting married at 29, going to grad school. So I was focused on that. But then I started having kids, and then the 30s became about motherhood. And I love that. I mean, that was I never feel like I lost myself, but I never feel like I lost myself like some people say about themselves. But I do feel that the road to becoming a mom, and I became a stay-at-home mom for 7 years. So my that whole decade was about having children, being a stay-at-home mom, doing for them, caretaking, but by choice. So I don't look at it as anything that anybody forced on me. My husband and I decided that's what I wanted. I've always wanted that. But I knew it wasn't forever. I knew it was temporary. So I basically fulfilled what I wanted. However, the hard part was I know what, you plan your life and you don't expect loss and trauma, right? To come along and bite you in the ass. So, having Daniel, my first son, he was a twin, which that's another thing that was shocking. And I lost the baby. So it was a very traumatic birth, losing his twin brother, him living in a NICU for 2 months, as you guys know. So that was very traumatic for me. So that became now not only am I, doing what I thought I wanted to do or love doing, and now it's tainted or added trauma to it, of having to survive that experience and caretake while you're traumatized by loss and grief and everything else. And so like that affected me in other ways because now I have my second child. He's completely healthy and I'm traumatized. I am operating out of anxiety. I'm sad, I'm stressed, and I don't know why because he's normal. He's healthy. He's everything I ever wanted. And so I think we don't really put enough attention to perimental health or prenatal mental health and how that even me as a therapist didn't realize how anxious I was because I was not grounded. I was on another planet, because I was just surviving. And then I'm caretaking and surviving at the same time. And I think women don't realize how much that affects them. So I feel like, and then losing my dad. So like, I feel like all of that really took over my decade. But at the same time, I view it as a wonderful decade because I love being a mom. Like it's one of my favorite things in the world. And I love being a stay-at-home mom. It was hard as shit. Sometimes it was harder than work, and I've experienced both. So I really do acknowledge how wonderful the decade was and how also it really just the anxiety and the trauma of what my experiences with birth, which is so many women, really really affected me in so many ways.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My cousin told me one time, you can have it all, but not at the same time. And I think women, strong, independent women don't like to admit that, but I feel like it's true. I feel like you don't always have it all and can do it all. And something goes through the wayside and we need help and we need to ask for help and we need to receive help and we need to know that we're not living in a country that has the villages that our ancestors did, that our families did. I think that that's another layer of it because when I was in the world of stay-at-home mom, a lot of times the working moms and stay-at-home moms would have words and I'm like, this is so stupid. This is so not right, And I think that that's another layer to my experience as well as a woman, as a mother.
I can relate to that.
I'm in such a daze today. Like, I can't think. Like, what is wrong with me?
Your brain is turned off.
No, my brain is not on today. I can't even, I don't even know my life. Was I? Yeah, because I remember turning 30.
When we all turned 30, I felt like that was like an epic year. I felt like everybody celebrated to the fullest. I missed your birthday. because I had the chicken
Mark
bone.
came to my birthday.
Yes.
That's right. In the
That's
limo.
right.
Yeah. I remember everybody threw something huge for their birthday. I remember going out and doing it up that whole year that everybody was turning 30, because now it was like, well, we're older and we're working and we have money and
Mhm.
nobody had kids yet, and it
Mhm.
was like, oh, we're going to go out. And I remember I missed your birthday.
You had the chicken pox.
I had the chicken pox at 30.
Oh
I
my
remember you had
goodness.
the chicken pox forever. Like I'm like, this girl's always she's had
But
the
Mark
chicken pox
came.
for-
Mark was like, I'm going.
I know. I was living with
funny.
Mark. We were boyfriend and girlfriend. And him and a friend, John, they were like, we're not going out without you. And I'm like, no, you have to go. Make sure everybody has a good time.
Oh my God, that was a great night.
Yeah. They still,
Sammy.
those two guys still talk about that. Remember that night me and you went out without Sammy?
Do you know what I remember about my 30th birthday? That I fell down the stairs in Latin Quarters. The new one, not the old one, not the one where I met my husband, but like the new one. I'm like, I fell down the stairs and I hurt myself. And the next day, me and our mutual friend had a barbecue to celebrate both of us together. The other cancer in the group, and I was limping. I was like, oh, I have to make
No.
potato salad, and I couldn't walk.
Oh my God.
Anyway, that was what I remember.
Yeah. I remember that year of turning 30. I felt it was like an epic year. It was a fun year.
Mhm.
But my 30s, I mean, aside from like, you have the themes of let me put my foundation down, where it's like you get a home, you get married, you start having kids, doing all those again, the checklist. And I had a really hard time with the women in my family. I started to really see who they were. And they were not supportive. And that made me really sad. I felt like when I became a mother, I just got criticized about everything. I could not do
What?
anything right.
Really?
Just
Like your
everything.
being a mother?
Yeah, it was like the women in my family had an opinion about everything. And I remember going back to work because I needed to. I knew if I stayed home, I'd be depressed. And at work, I felt like that was me. That was my identity, like in the sense of like not my job being my identity, but that's where I was my true self at work. And I would still say all the time, I go to work to rest because when I was home, it was like when you're home, you're on because you got these little kids and they depend on you. But it was also like my happiest era. I loved being a mom, but it was overcoming the obstacles of the criticism. I mean, I had a cousin that used to wish my husband Happy Mother's Day for years. That shit pissed me off. And everybody would criticize me all the time because I went back to work and Mark was the one that like picked the girls up from school and did homework and cooked dinner. And because he was doing the active labor, it's like, oh, he does too much, or he's a Mr. Mom, or he's a whatever. And it was just me battling against all these societal norms of, what a male and female's role is, what a mother and father. So I would argue it all the time. I'm like, he's a father.
Mm-hmm.
He's not a babysitter. Those are his children. And I'm like, these gender roles. So I felt like even though it was the happiest time with my kids and I loved being a mom because I felt like I got to redo my childhood through them. I would get on the floor and play Barbies with them. I would do everything. I would have all these activities and vacations and time, but there was this battle of generations before me and how much they would criticize or judge me. And they didn't, and I used to get so frustrated because I would be like, you know what? You're a woman, like you had children too. Like, you're seeing him do the active stuff, but a woman does a lot of emotional labor. A woman does a lot of, like, I know everything. I know the appointments. I know everybody's blood type. I know what vaccines they've had. I know their school. I fill out all the forms. I'm the one that does the food shopping. Yeah, he makes dinner, but he calls me, what do I make for dinner tonight? Because he doesn't even know what's in there, so it's like, nothing would function if I didn't organize it. And I wasn't doing all the things behind the scenes. And I remember he went away because his father was sick. So he had to go out of the country for a week. And I remember people saying, you're going to see how much he does now. And the only thing I remember that week was I could not remember when to throw out the garbage. Everything else I had locked down. And I'm like, when the hell does the garbage go out? And I'm like, what day is it? Like, that was just a job I never wanted to do, was put the garbage out. But everything else I had on lock. Like, you know? And so, you know, you have that where you're trying to maintain a marriage and you're in survival mode the whole time because your kids are small. And then you're fighting within yourself, like these generational norms that don't feel normal, you know? And I would tell them all the time, I'm like, I have the morning shift, he has the evening shift. I was like, I'm the one that sets everything up for the day so that it goes smoothly for everybody else. Nobody does that for me. And even when I had my second daughter, I went through postpartum depression and I didn't even know I was going through postpartum depression and what that felt like. Like I felt like I was trapped. I felt like I wanted to run away. Like it was such an overwhelming feeling. And I felt like my 30s, you know, your 20s, you're creating this identity. And then I felt like my 30s, being a wife and mother and all that, I was losing myself. But my job was the only one that kept who I was at my core. Like at work, I could be who I was, like truly, like Samantha. But at home, I was mom, I was wife, I was daughter, I was sister, I was everything else. And so for me, it was like the start of this internal battle of, you know, fighting those generational stuff, you know, but at the same time, it's also, I feel like my happiest years because I loved my kids when they were little. I mean, I still love them now.
Yeah.
But when they were little, they were like so cute. And they were just, I loved
really
them
are.
so much. Like they just brought me joy, you know. I
Mhm.
lived through
Yeah.
them being happy, you know.
I'm probably so blank because I have none of that. I don't have kids. It just never happened. It's not like I didn't want to have kids. It just never happened. I didn't want it enough to like go through, you know, fertility and all testing. So, and
Did
then
you feel like in your career, like I know for me, like the first 10 years of my career, I felt like I had imposter syndrome.
really?
Yeah.
No, I just was surviving at my first 10 years of my career. I didn't, it was, you know, working as an RN on the floor in the hospital. It's just, you never know what you're going to walk into that night. You know, it's just always, there's always, it was like 12 hours of just constant, like a checklist going, you know, you had to, you know, you get report and then you have your 8 patients, your 10 patients. That's what it was then. And, I did the night shift. So it was just like, who's going to code? Who's going to need something? Who's going to need blood? Like all this, who's going to wake up in the middle of the night and start, you know, thrashing and yelling he needs to go home because he doesn't know where the fuck he is. It was just so anxiety producing, my job for all of those years straight. I think I was there 8 years overnight in St. Francis. And that consumed a lot of my life because I was stuck. I felt stuck because I didn't like it. I loved who I worked with. I didn't like the anxiety that it produced every time I went in. And also working overnight, like 7 p to 7 a, when you have to sleep during the day and everyone else is going about their day, that's also, it's just the worst feeling.
That's probably why the 30s were a blur.
The kids just didn't come. And I didn't really care about it. We had a discussion. He was okay with that. He was okay. And I was okay with that. But if I was really okay with that, because, you know, it seems like that's the thing you're supposed to do is have kids, you know, but I'm okay now. But sometimes I think back, I'm like, damn, my lady parts are out. I'm never going to have it. I'm never, ever in this lifetime going to ever feel like what it is to be a mother.
Well, except to your dogs. You're a dog mama.
Yeah.
A good one.
Yeah. No, but you know, I have all of your kids too and friends' kids, but I'll never, like when I got my hysterectomy, I'm like, oh my God, that's it. That's like, well, it's always it because I'm 50, but it's like, it's really it. Like you can't by some miracle have a child.
Yeah.
I don't want one now. Trust me. No, no, God.
I would not want to oops baby now.
No, 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 no.
So the
But
one
you know, I'm happy with how my life turned out. I really, you know, I enjoyed my 30s, my 40s, my 20s. I enjoyed it all.
I also feel like we were the guinea pig generation that got to choose. Like we were influenced a lot, of course, by family and culture and generations, but we also were a little bit free enough to do things that didn't have to always be the checklist. Even though we still sometimes succumb to it, I think also, you know, I think we have friends that don't have kids, and I think the generations after are normalizing it a little more, or you know, friends who prioritize, or not friends, but people we know that prioritize other things like couples. Like I just want a life partner. I don't need to get married. I don't need, children. I would just like to travel the world. Like I think that's becoming more normalized. And I think our generation didn't know yet that we could do those things. But so it's like we creeped into it sometimes by mistake. And then it's like, I could do this. I don't have to do this. And I think, we were like that. It was still the pressure. We still got the pressure for the most part.
No, I definitely think the younger generation are showing that there are different paradigms.
They have more choices, or
choices.
Yeah. Yeah.
And whereas we felt like there's only one way to do it and one ideal, and that's not true.
Yeah.
And that's worldwide. Like that's not
Right.
even just culture wise, that's human wise. Like it was worldwide, like mother, father, and children. Like there was only one thing. And if you weren't that, you were a failure.
Yeah.
And I think, our generation was in between of that. And
There's a few of my friends' children they're in their 20s, but they're like, I don't want kids, and I'm like, okay.
Well, even me knowing I wanted kids and I did want a family. I always wanted a family, but that wasn't even a question. But it was like, I knew I didn't want it right away. I knew I didn't want it at 20 something. I knew I wanted it closer to 30. And even that was like, not so much my mom, but people in my family that like, are you sure? Like, is she going to ever get married? I'm like, I'm a Cancer. Of course I'm going to get married and have children. That is like in my DNA. But I knew this is not for me anytime soon. I needed to be free for a while.
I remember growing up.
Parties.
I remember growing up being like, I'm going to get married at 21. Then I'm going to have my first kid at 23.
21.
My God. Yeah. I was like, 10 and saying that, like, because that was what was being fed to us. Your early 20s, you'll get, you get in a relationship, you get married, and then you'll have your kids.
Or it was like, oh, I have to have kids before I'm 30. That was like the other.
I heard that. Yeah.
And then, I was like, I'll get married when I'm like between 26 and 28 and then have my first kid before I'm 30. And then I was 26 and I'm like, I am nowhere near ready to get married, nor do I want to, so
I was trying to get into the clubs at 20. I remember hiding in the bathroom to get into a club in Long Island because we knew somebody there. Gosh, imagine being married at that age. Hell no.
I feel like the 40th birthday is another like 30. Like we're all did it up. We tried. Most of us we did another trip. We went to Aruba, except for you, Susanna. All of us who are going to Italy went to Aruba for the most part. We made it happen, which I think was really cool that we did that. And we all had most of us had little kids. But then 41, 42 hit and those awakenings started. That was just like
the 40s went by very fast. Fast.
It was like shit, like this is an important decade. And I just started to realize, well, first of all, I was on my healing journey from a bunch of stuff. And I started to get into spirituality, which was that deeper level of healing. And then I started bringing it to my work. And then I just felt like my perspective, my view of life changed. What I feel happens in your 40s, or for me, and we've talked about this, is like you are young enough to make a change, but you realize life is fast. By really fast.
Really fast.
Are you going to live your true self? Or are you going to, which we don't even know what that is at first when we start to have this awakening. And I guess that's what they used to call midlife crisis. For me, I call it a spiritual awakening, where I'm like, oh my God, like, what do I want? And then I started seeing other people went through it. I know Sam went through it before me. And then I started having friends who went through it. And then my clients still go through it. And it always was in the 40s. Mm-hmm. And it was like, either a career change, a marriage, or a lot of divorce in your 40s, or just anything, just yourself, a complete 180 of it within yourself. Like that connection, for me, it was like this connection to myself on a spiritual level, coming into things that I had passion for, like astrology. And then the major losses I went through, I lost my mom towards the end of it. I lost my husband, and I'm like, what the fuck? And now I feel like there's this rediscovering of who I am, and there's these parts of me that are becoming that girl in her 20s again, in a different way, of course, in a mature way. And I just feel like part of it is because of losing my husband, sure, but it's also just the decade in general leading up to it towards the end. And I just feel I'm so connected to myself and my spiritual side, and I'm wired in astrology with all the water that I have in me, to be very spiritual and intuitive, and really owning that rather than just, know about it. And so going through loss and grief and trauma feels like all of that put together, this perfect storm of what you're going to do with all this shit, you're either going to stay stuck in it and be miserable, or you're going to do the work to heal and find some joy in other ways besides including my children. And I think that's led to my who am I outside of being a married woman of 20 years and 24 years with somebody. Who am I? And I think that just coincides with the decade in general. I think that some level of that would have happened without Jose's passing, but a huge part of it is because of Jose's passing. And so I think that now that I'm in this space where I got to find out who I am, I have an idea who she is, and I'm working through that. But I feel like the superpower is finding joy in the midst of pain and grief, and knowing that life is not over, but at the same time, allowing myself to grieve in the way that I need to whenever that happens, which is daily and every other day. And then also the joy. Yesterday I was at the beach and I was just in such a great headspace, and last week I was feeling anxious. Like, that's just how grief works, and that's just how it is. And I think embracing that has helped me move forward a lot more. And I think that entering 50 is really exciting to me, because I've always heard people like Oprah and Halle Berry talk so great about the 50s and 60s, 40s, 50s, 60s when I was in my 20s. So I feel like that's very hopeful. I look at my cousin, she looks amazing. I have cousins who look amazing, and they're 60. So I just feel excited, because I think the 50s is going to be that decade, which is, I'm already there, but that decade of fucks given. Me. And I feel like there's a 20 something in year old in me was there. You know what I mean? Is in there still, where she gave no fucks. And not the whole decade, but there was a decade. And that's why I say I was very proud of myself that I did that, because everyone around me was doing something else. And I just really listened to my intuition, and I'm coming back to that girl who's really listens to what she wants to do with love and integrity and compassion and as a mother. But I just feel like I'm just going to do what I want to do. Mm-hmm. And I think that entering 50, I think a lot of us feel that way, but for different reasons.